Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to the OFFSITE INSIGHT Podcast. Today it is brought to you by the Creative Co-op. Please reach out to Gino and the team if you have any advertising or marketing needs at tcco.ca. Today I'm super excited to be joined by Mr. Rob Krauss, the founder of Building Edge. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Really glad to be here, Dave.
Awesome. I want to get started. What exactly is it that you do?
Yeah, great question. So Building Edge Strategies, we're a consulting firm.
Okay.
And we're based here in Simcoe. And we help businesses, developers, project sponsors navigate the maze of government.
What do you mean? It's the easiest thing.
Yeah, right. No, it's government can be a maze.
Absolutely.
And so we work with clients to help work through government to get approvals for their projects, or access government incentives, or some businesses see an opportunity to sell their goods or services to government. So we help them through that process, and especially when there's a big government decision that sits on your business's critical path, that's where we step in, because that interface with government can be really important, and it can affect timelines and costs and risks of projects and all that sort of thing. So.
Yes, and sometimes the government forgets that uncertainty is the worst thing for a business owner, for especially in the construction industry. You want certainty so that you can be confident going forward. So I imagine you're helping to bring some clarity to your clients.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you get started in this?
Yeah. From the time I was a kid, I was really, really passionate about government.
Cool.
And the way, we live in a democracy, which is a great thing to cherish and have. And I've just been fascinated with the way decisions really get made.
Sure.
And how real people and businesses can play a role in that process. And for me, it started when I was a kid, and my grandfather grew up in Etobicoke. Okay. And he was surrounded by mostly new Canadians. Yep. And they, Italian Canadians and Greeks and others. And he was very familiar with how government worked, and he acted as their champion. Cool. And so he had these new Canadians, and they would sort of work with my grandfather, and he would enjoy taking their issues to City Hall and to Queen's Park, and he had a business himself, and so he was sympathetic to their troubles. Yeah. And so I loved that, and eventually he got the nickname the Godfather.
Okay, cool.
In the community, and so I would visit him, and he would be hammering away on his typewriter at the time, and penning letters to politicians to raise concerns or opportunities. And so just kind of got the bug from there. Wow. And then, went on to study politics and political science, and in school as the base of my education. And then while I was in school, my first real job out of school, I knocked on a city councilor's door in Toronto, and I said, I would love to work for free. I just want to learn. And so they accepted my free labor.
Naturally.
Not a good deal for both. And that councillor was Doug Ford.
Oh, wow.
And so, of course, now he's the premier of the province. And so that was my first exposure on the ground working in politics, and had 15 years in government and on the political side and civil service after that. And a really exciting ride through, working for the mayor and for the premier and ministers and government agencies, but always really loved this intersection of government and businesses, where that's where things actually happen. So always really loved that
Absolutely.
spot.
I mean, I can only imagine at the time, you were like, oh, you've got these fond memories of, working with your grandfather, seeing him do something that he was really passionate about, helping people. And then you were on the other side, and now you've kind of swung back, and it almost looks like a perfect circle. Like you planned it out that way. That's a really cool story. I want to shift gears a little bit here, because I think there's this sentiment out there especially from the business community, even from the government side, that there's this natural friction between the two. Why do you think that exists? And why do you think that there's, it's almost like a pendulum, because some years it feels like it's easier and some years it feels like it's harder. And, sometimes it's this political party, sometimes it's this political party. Where do you think that natural tension comes from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're fortunate. We have some terrific politicians in the Simcoe area, Mayor Nuttall and Minister Khanjin and others, and they're doing their absolute best. But just there, like you said, there is a structural friction there that does exist.
Yeah,
and that's because government is optimized to do certain things,
right,
and look at certain things, and tend to be risk adverse, and businesses and home builders and contractors, they're focused on another set of things. And so just to expand on that a little bit, businesses, whether you're a builder or a contractor or a supplier, you're focused on your ROI and your timeline.
Yep.
And delivering the kitchen on time and on budget and having a happy customer. And that's what drives you.
Yep.
And government, different set of things they're focused on.
Certainly.
Different lens. And so government is looking at, this decision I'm making, does it align with our policies?
Right.
Our bylaws and our policies and the building code. And have they checked the technical requirements that need to be checked? And that's another thing. And does it pass the political sniff test?
Yep.
Is this going to be a hot political potato, and am I going to step in it potentially? And I don't want to put my neck out there. So you have these two sides, but fortunately, I think I like to imagine it as like a Venn diagram.
Sure.
Where you have like two circles.
Yep.
And each has their own circle and their own focus, but the circles do overlap.
Yeah.
And so that's where the cool stuff really happens, like where the rubber meets the road. And in Ontario, we need homes. Mm-hmm. We're short 1.5 million homes.
Yep.
And we need affordability, and we need jobs and economic activity. And those are the things we're all aligned on.
Right.
All three levels of government.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah.
And so the Home Building Association is really actually driving those things forward. And so, but that's the overlap where we all agree we want to meet those outcomes. And so that's the alignment. And so sometimes I think, to your question of the friction, we get lost in the minutia of government.
Yeah.
And we lose sight of why.
Right.
And so I think let's always bring it back to, why are we doing this? And let's try and see stuff from each other's perspective.
Absolutely. And sometimes I think about it as, I don't know if it's the way humans are wired, but sometimes it's easier to see the things we disagree about versus the things we agree on. And sometimes having that reminder of, we actually both have the same goal in this case, which is to build more homes. Maybe we have different ideas on how to best achieve that.
Yeah.
But to your point, if we can have, let's understand the government's perspective, let's understand the home builder's perspective, let's understand, people at large, what their perspective is. People want to have a shelter.
Yeah.
That's when you can take that Venn diagram. Okay, we're aligned on this. Maybe we don't agree exactly on how to get it done. Yeah. But we're both, or all three, everyone is kind of operating under the same goal, which is really, really important.
Yeah.
So when a project stalls, and it seems like it's on the government side, what do you think is happening on that perspective?
Yeah, I think, and it can happen even where we found the sweet spot in the Venn diagram, and we're all, paddling in the same direction. Projects can stall, and it can be really frustrating when it happens. Behind the scenes, like if you look behind the curtain, there's usually a few reasons why it could stall out. Yeah. And so one of them is bandwidth.
Sure.
And so, civil servants and politicians, they've got a lot on their plate, and they're juggling a lot of files.
Absolutely.
And so, if you're a business and you have a project and a team and they're on standby while you're waiting for a permit, of course, that's your priority, as it should be. But government may have 100 things they're looking at.
Right.
So bandwidth is one of those reasons. Another reason is miscommunication. So government is this big machine with all these moving parts, and sometimes they don't talk to each other.
I was just gonna say, sometimes I feel like they're in silos. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And there can be these silos, and so, but who's the quarterback behind the scenes that's going to stitch it all together,
right?
And connect the dots. And so that function isn't always there. And so, the building department might be waiting for engineering, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so, you can run into that sort of an issue. There could be outstanding technical issues as well. It could be another reason why things get stuck.
Right.
So civil servants, government, they have technical requirements that they must satisfy, and they must complete the reviews and sign off on it, and they have to demonstrate they've satisfied those requirements. So, sometimes there can be discussion about whether those requirements are appropriate or not, but that's a piece, and then political too. There's a political side to this too.
Certainly.
So if you're a builder and you're advancing a project, and there's local community opposition to the project or neighborhood concerns, then those can bubble up. Or if we're entering an election window, then that can impact projects too. So it could be a combination of these various things, but it's I like to think of it like your car. Imagine you're driving and your car breaks down.
Yeah.
So what do? Do you get out and scream and kick the tires? Well, yeah.
I don't think that's going to help.
Maybe initially, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't help.
Yeah.
So it's important to diagnose.
Right.
If it's stalled, if it's stuck, where is it stuck, and how do we unstick it?
Let's, okay, we can have our, our frustrations, our emotional response to this, let's call it opposition, but then it's like, okay, what is the root cause of that opposition? Is it a political thing? Is it a technical thing?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think as you're in our industry for long enough, you kind of understand, okay, wait, like, what is it? And I think, speaking personally, some of the frustration that I have, for example, is it can depend on where you're working. Like, we work in Simcoe County.
Right.
If one municipality might have different technical requirements from another municipality, which has a different technical requirement from a third municipality. And sometimes you're like, I'm doing similar projects in 3 different areas, and I've got 3 different reports or 6 different reports I have to do. When that's a frustrating thing for me.
Absolutely.
How do I, better understand that perspective? Because, Tay is different from Oro, who's different from Springwater.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that comes down to also your mentality when you're working with governments,
right? And
in trying to be proactive,
right?
So one thing that's always struck me is our businesses in Simcoe County, our home building businesses, they're so dialed in. Like, they are just the best professionals, and they're doing these incredible projects, these complex projects, and they've dialed in their budget and their schedule, and they've got these teams they're coordinating, and they're managing so many things, and sometimes the government risk element can be neglected.
Right. And
so I think, to your question, that's an important piece of it. And so maybe that means building relationships proactively with these different municipalities, and mapping out their requirements in each municipality and how they differ, and so, but yeah, that can be a big challenge.
So really, it's not necessarily, yes, you can be frustrated about it, but there's steps that you can take to make sure that you're aligned. So when you're going to Tay, you have an understanding of what it is that they're going to want.
Yeah.
And when you want to work in the city of Barrie, you have an understanding of what they're going to want.
Yeah.
So you can do some of that legwork at the beginning, so there isn't that, uncertainty, that risk going down. So what would you say are some tips and tricks when, for a builder, for a renovator, someone who's, working, has to work with the government? We all have to work with them. So what are some tips and tricks, for builders to work with the government?
Yeah, and it varies depending on the scope of your project. And are you advancing a redevelopment, a new subdivision, or a new home, or do you need a building permit? Like, it'll depend to some extent on the scope, but generally speaking, first thing to do is define with clarity what do you need from government?
Right. Okay.
What decision do you need from government? What approval do you need from government? And like you said, it may vary from one municipality to the next. And but important to know, what do I need from government? What approval, and from whom? So who is the decision maker here, and who influences the decision?
Right.
So I would say that's step one. Step two is, once you've locked that down, think like government. Like, put yourself in their shoes for a moment.
Yep.
And we know that they're going to be looking at technical requirements, and we know that government will be looking at policies, and do you adhere to their policies? Right. And we know that they're keen to whether an issue is a political issue or not. So run through your project, and do you check all of those boxes, because they're going to be assessing on their end. So, put yourself in their shoes for a moment and do that exercise, and because it could impact your project if it gets hung up. So it's worth doing. And then the third piece would be building those relationships and building support, and proactively and early on.
Right.
And so you don't want to be, so for instance, you don't show up at a job site and on the day of construction and just hope for the best.
Right.
You've done meticulous planning, and you've got your materials and your design and et cetera. And so you're mapping that out in advance. Same thing with government.
Right.
So map it out, build the relationships, understand the requirements, and hopefully smooth sailing from there.
Okay. and I think, there's been a lot of progress made across Simcoe County in that relationship as a whole. There's been a lot of advocacy work from the Simcoe County Home Builders Association. I think a lot of the various municipalities have been receptive to that, because they also don't want to be cast in this bad light. Oh, don't build there because you're going to have so much problems with this township or X township or Y township. So I think there's a change of tone that everyone's like, let's work together on this, right? Obviously, from the Premier's office, there's been this direction like, look, guys, we got to figure out how to work together and solve this problem. Sometimes it doesn't always go that way. So when, as a home builder or, a developer, when do you think it's appropriate to escalate, or when is it appropriate to say, okay, it's not time yet, let's keep working on that checklist? But eventually everyone gets to a point where it's like, look, I seem to be banging my head against the wall here. What do I do? Yeah, that's a great question. And that can be a frustrating moment if you feel like you've done everything right, and things are still stuck. So I would think of escalation. I guess this is pun intended, but escalation is like a tool. Sure. And it shouldn't just be a knee-jerk reaction. Right. So think of escalation as a tool, and your goal is to get to a solution, move forward with your project, or get the decision you need. So it's appropriate to escalate when you've done the work, meaning if you've satisfied, you align with their policy, and you've satisfied the technical requirements, and there's no burning political issue there, and you've gone through the process. And if you're still facing unnecessary roadblocks, and you're trying to build a home or something that we desperately need and keep people employed, then it's appropriate to escalate. Right. And but it should be done tactfully. Certainly. So I wouldn't escalate like a hammer. Right. But like more of like a precision, scalpel, like instrument. Yeah, you got to use the right tool. Yeah. Escalation is a tool, but it's not a jackhammer. Yeah. Right. Yeah. We want to use something that's got a little bit more finesse. Yeah. Like you said, a scalpel, but I'm, not a jackhammer, but maybe an impact driver. There something that's a little bit more, okay, it's forceful. Yeah. But it's not, gonna tear down that relationship that you've been trying to build. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point, and it is a relationship business, and so when you are escalating, I think it's important that if you're taking the impact driver approach,
then you're going forward and you're highlighting the challenge you're facing,
Yep.
but you're also coming forward with a solution.
Right.
So if there's a solution to be had, then bring it forward. Let's be solutions minded.
Right.
And because we want government to be solutions minded. So that's part of it. And then another part of it is how are you escalating and who are you escalating to?
Right.
And so you're not always texting the mayor about everything.
Sure.
There may be times where that's appropriate, but so just exercise tact, I would say, in that escalation too.
Right.
Yeah.
And because, ultimately, depending on who you're approaching, it could be more political or less political. And you want to make sure you're using maybe it's not an impact driver, maybe it's a screwdriver, depending on where you're going to as well. And I imagine that's where you kind of come in. Yeah. You can kind of help provide your clients with advice and guidance on what tool, what maybe you obviously would have a lot of experience in terms of, okay, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
So how does someone get in touch? Like, when would you say is a good time to bring you in versus when is it too late? Because maybe there's been relationship damage that's already happened that's, hard to come back from.
Right.
When should someone say, hey, I better reach out to Rob?
I would say if you're advancing a complex project and government sits firmly on your critical path.
Right.
For a key approval or a key program you need from government, like a incentive program, or if you're looking to sell to government as a procurement opportunity, the earlier the better.
Right.
So when you're in the planning stages of your project, to map this out, build a strategy, and start that thoughtful engagement with government early, and put yourself as a business or an organization in the best position possible. So that's the recommendation.
Yeah.
Earlier the better.
Yep.
And put yourself in the best spot possible.
Right. And that helps to, clear up some of the uncertainty that can exist. You start those conversations earlier, you bring Rob on board, Rob knows what he's doing. Here's, and maybe you have some foresight. Okay, this is where we're going to have to spend most of our time. Right. This particular issue in this subset. Because hey, you've had experience of this can be a challenge, right? So even knowing what the challenge is half the battle, I find, right? Awareness, because if you don't even know what the problem is, you can't solve it. Yeah. So that's where you can kind of come in and help, our developers or builders have an understanding of where to go. Yeah. This is a little bit of an off-topic one, but you obviously see a variety of different issues, I would imagine, for developers, for government. If you had a magic wand, what's one thing that you'd like to see happen just to make it a little bit less friction? We're going to pull off the brakes a little bit. What would you like to see?
Oh, a magic wand.
Yeah, you get to do whatever it is you want. You've got a magic wand. It's maybe not necessarily practical for X number of reasons, but you get to do whatever Rob Krauss wants.
I like this. I like the magic wand. So a couple things. Reduce costs.
Okay.
So right now we're in a real estate building and development slowdown, notwithstanding the fact that we have a housing crisis.
Right.
But pro formas are not working.
Right.
And it's too expensive to build, and it's not financially viable.
Right.
But yet we critically depend on building homes and construction. Not just for the homes themselves where people live, but for jobs and economic opportunity.
It's a huge economic force in our province, for sure.
Huge. So there are various proposals being considered to reduce the cost, but government should move more swiftly on that. So magic wand, number one, cost. Number two would be just a culture, and you, as you said, we've seen some great progress in Simcoe in this area, but just a culture of yes, not a culture of no. So meaning, if a business or an organization is delivering something we desperately need, how do we roll out the red carpet for them, and facilitate that and make that simpler? And there are all sorts of things government can do to help streamline that without spending a lot of money, but just make the process simpler and easier to advance. So those would be the two big things that I would apply the magic wand to.
Fantastic. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. And excuse me, I think some homeowners, are still, we've been through this period of great inflation. And, I think the construction industry in particular was outsized affected by that inflation, because we, like the building materials, for example, have seen, it's the political cost, it's the land cost, it's the development charges cost, it's the material cost. The construction industry itself, at least in my perspective, has been hit on the cost side of things in many different ways. And the average homeowner or the average prospective homeowner has seen their grocery bill go up. They've seen everything happen.
Yes. But
then they go to get a renovation done and like, oh, wow, this is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. And it's like, well, in the last 5 years, like so many different costs have escalated even beyond inflation.
Yeah.
So I think, helping, seeing where the government can help with that is a good solution, because, at the end of the day, you're right. We have a housing crisis. We need more homes, but it's also prohibitively expensive in the current market to build those homes that we need. So we're it's a challenging spot, but I think I agree, both sides are trying to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So Rob, how do people reach out to you?
We're at www.buildingedge.ca, or you can find me on LinkedIn, and love talking about this stuff and helping companies, organizations work through this. Yeah. I'm really passionate about that. So just welcome anyone to reach out.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I mean, it's a multi-generational passion, it sounds like, going back to your grandfather. So that's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming in today, Rob. It's been a pleasure. And I think lots of people can learn, like, the government isn't trying to be difficult.
Yeah.
They just have a different set of criteria that they're working with.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's a good perspective for most people to have. Like, look, we can work together. Call Rob to figure out how exactly best to work together. And then we can, continue to move towards our goal of building more homes in Simcoe County, particularly.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think we nailed it. Thank you so much for coming in again today, Rob. If you would like to be a sponsor or join the podcast as a guest, please reach out to podcast@schba.ca. Thanks again, Rob, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Dave. Enjoyed it.